Adrian, I got a quick question for you.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen the original Wizard of Oz?
I have.
So, there's a sequence that takes place in the poppy fields in the film, and it starts snowing, and it's supposed to be very calming for Dorothy and her friends.
Yeah, I vaguely remember the snow. Yeah, that's a wild scene. Okay.
Yeah, it actually kind of ties into what we're talking about today. But that snow would not have been as calming if they actually knew what it was. The snowflakes were based off of asbestos.
Whoa. So did they not know about the dangers yet?
It's the 30s. I don't know. Maybe they were putting asbestos in their cakes or something. Like, hey, it helps fluff it out more. I have no idea. But it was just a crazy fact, and it ties in because of snow to what we're talking about today. Which, by the way, brings us to the episode. Thank you for joining us for the Drive Back podcast. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Adrian.
And today we're going to be doing our back-to-back episode. We're going to be taking a look at what, Adrian?
A back-to-back episode is where it doesn't quite qualify as a franchise. So this is not going to be, it can't have 3 or more movies. And it can't be a standalone movie, but it has to be 2 movies, very niche, that are related in some capacity, whether by name or by plot or by just general idea. So yeah, that's what a back-to-back is.
That is absolutely right. And today we have the original 1982 The Thing up against its prequel, the 2011 remake, or 2011 version, also called The Thing, which is very exciting. There was an original, I think, 50s movie called The Thing from Another World, which the 82 film was loosely based upon. That and the short story or book of a similar name. We're not counting that because it has nothing to do with this. This is an established, serialized films. So, but let's go ahead and jump right in. Adrian, what's your experience with The Thing? Did you see it? Did you see both of these or either one before we filmed this? Or what's your experience?
Yeah, I saw the original The Thing, when I was either 6 or 7. My dad showed it to me, and really, really good movie. Definitely loved it then when I was younger. And then the 2011 version, I saw it in theaters when it came out because I was pretty excited based off knowing the first one.
Gotcha. There seems to be a running theme of your dad showing you movies that you probably shouldn't have been shown at 6 or 7. But hey, it exposed you to what you needed to see, I guess. But for me, yeah, The Thing, I saw it various different points, whether it was on TV or during high school, something like that. The 2011 version came out my junior or senior year, so didn't actually get to see it in theaters, but saw it shortly after it came out on home DVD at the time. And it's been a while since I've seen the 2011 one. I actually own the 4K remaster of the original one. So it's been quite exciting. But for anyone out there, before we dive into the films, if you do want to watch these movies, the original The Thing is available on the streaming service Shudder, if you do have that. If you do not have Shudder, it is available to rent pretty much anywhere. And the same goes for the 2011 remake. It is only available to rent. It isn't on anything, unfortunately. I feel like these two should be always side to side because they are complementary, which we'll get into story-wise and kind of themes-wise. But let's go ahead. We're going to take a look first at the original film, which is The Thing. Released in 1982, it was directed by John Carpenter and stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, and Keith David. Yes, the diabetes guy is in this film. A research team in Antarctica is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. So...
Oh, what a summary.
It's the whole movie. You gotta love when the horror movies, like creature features, have just the most basic plots.
Yeah, this is what it is. There's nothing else to it.
This is what you can expect. But so what, Adrian? What do you think now rewatching this as we kind of go into more critical eye? What you got?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's definitely it's a great creature movie. Definitely one of the staple in just creature horror for sure. I think it still holds up today in that aspect. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't. One thing that I do know without getting into spoilers quite yet is I just know that they did a lot on set to really kind of immerse the actors into the setting of the movie. similar to kind of some of the stuff that happened with Blair Witch Project as well. So just really neat, and some of that really translates well. Just some of the other stuff that's a little more dated, just like the overall film itself. But as far as like the practical effects and stuff, it's all phenomenal.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's kind of funny. I think you kind of have a little bit more of the opinion that was popular at the time of release, which is that you liked it. From what I'm assuming, you like it, not love it, or is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's okay. Like for a creature horror, it's really good. But as far as creature horror, that's like not my favorite type of horror. So that kind of limits it to being like, I understand it's probably like an A+ of that genre of film, but that's just not my favorite genre of film.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the like it, not love it kind of mentality, which seemed to be prevalent among critics of the time when it came out. I actually was watching a Ebert and Siskel review of it, I think a couple of weeks ago, and Ebert kind of said something very similar, which praising the effects, but other than that, it was just kind of meh. Which
I liked more than the effects, though. Definitely, there's more to love. Yeah,
but it was definitely more of a mixed reception at the time. I definitely fall into the other camp, which thinks that this is a masterwork in horror.
Really? Okay.
Not only because of the practical effects, which are incredible in this movie, but also it goes beyond that for me. It's also that horror of there's one person among us who isn't. Yes, the Among Us meme. There's
whatever the noise is that should play.
But it's like there's one person here who isn't who they say they are. Like that kind of horror is just when you're trapped in this location. That is absolutely existential to me. In terms of crisis. So I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's a very easy cinema experience. I mean, if for those of you who are affected by gory things, it might not be up your alley. There is some rather intense gore as a part
practical
of
gore, yeah,
all practical. Which there's some insane stories about how the people who made the effects in this movie were up for 20 hours a day and had a diet of candy bars and soda to make sure that they could stay up for 20 hours.
Before they started filming.
It wasn't even tied to the movie. This was after.
That's just the myth of the people that worked on the movie.
Exactly. But no, I think this movie is fantastic. I think if you're into horror movies, if you're into making stuff for anyone who's into making props or making just things with your hands, 100% need to watch this movie for the visual effects. So, but let's go ahead. We'll drop some spoiler warning. We are going to be talking about the plot details for a movie that is 40 years old now. So hopefully we get a 40th anniversary edition. That'd be pretty sweet.
Is it this year?
Yeah, 82 to 22.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So I'll be getting that Blu-ray when it comes out. But spoiler warning dropped. We can kind of fully talk about it. So Adrian, let's dive a little bit more. So at first, 'cause I think we both have a pretty favorable impression of the movie. What do you say doesn't work for you? Like what holds it back from being like an A+, like you said, of the genre, or maybe of horror?
Yeah, I think it's the limited aspect of the plot. I think nowadays I like a lot more of the smart horror where there's multiple layers to what's going on. And this is the similar problem that I have with the movie Halloween, which I know a lot of people love it, and I get the scary aspect that he kills just because, but that doesn't scare me. I love finding out the motive and I like more. So for this, it is just a creature horror, and that's why I don't necessarily align with the genre, because it's just killing for killing's sake on screen. It's just horror for horror's sake, which just doesn't really vibe with me that well. So that's pretty much the thing that doesn't hold up to me. Is to me in modern day good horror making or good horror films, there's usually a couple more layers to it, and this is just maybe a little too simple for me.
Sure, I can totally understand that, and I think have to disagree just a little bit. I don't think this is
like Halloween, right? You like that kind of.
I like them for different reasons.
Okay.
Like the Halloweens, specifically we'll talk the new Halloween trilogy. I think is the best example, because the original Halloween is it's held on a pedestal for various different reasons. But like, like one of my favorite horror films of the last 10 years is Midsommar, which is just an incredible film. But that, when you hold that next to like Halloween from 2018, I love them both, but for different reasons. Halloween isn't as good as Midsommar for any reason, but it's it's fun to watch. You don't watch Halloween to be scared. You watch Halloween because you know that people who deserve it are gonna get it, and you want to see
nothing for me. Like I don't.
Like it's just it's a fun theater experience, and that's really all that.
And I never did see them in theaters. I will say that I only saw the the second to last Halloween in theaters was the only one I watched,
which would be the 2018 one.
Yeah,
because then Halloween Kills came out last year, and Halloween Ends comes out this year, which is fitting because John Carpenter directed both, or is involved with the creation of both.
And I'll give an example of some. There's two movies that are both kind of cult classics, I guess, but I find both of them really interesting. One is The Cave, where the underwater cave diving, where they find an underwater biome with creatures in it. Again, a creature movie with a little bit more to it, like a little bit more of a concept. Where have the creatures been? Like a little bit more explaining going on. And then The Descent, another creature movie that has probably some of the most context around why the creatures are there and what they do and what their hierarchy's like and all that. And again, I'm not asking for like a breakdown of their society, but just like reveal some stuff. And this movie is straight up, again, a creature movie that just does what the creature does, which is, now that we're in spoilers, which is imitate someone and kill everybody.
Yeah, or to get as much infected as possible.
Yeah, to spread to sow its seeds to the whole crew.
And which we do find out, I mean, there is some tease of it in this film. It is further expanded upon in the prequel, which we'll get to when we talk about it. But it does have a goal, kind of. It's trying to infect as many people as possible. It's trying to get out of where it currently is by taking whatever form is most advantageous. Which is horrifying, because I think in the original film, the one we're talking about right now, they talk about how quickly it would take to overtake the world and why they have to keep it there. So there is definitely a goal, but I think I do think it is a little bit of a misnomer to classify this as a creature feature. Yes, it has a creature. Well, I would actually say the prequel is more of a creature feature than this movie is. At least because that one has the creature in it, which we'll go over when we get there. This one is... It's
what you're saying.
It's the humans. Yeah, and I think the horror in this one comes much more from the fact that it is basically Among Us. And the fact that there has been no The Thing game yet is, like, I would play the hell out of that game. Like,
well, it really would be a reskinned Among Us. What it would probably be like is the Friday the 13th game.
Well, no.
Kind of.
Yeah, like the Friday the 13th, the Among Us, and I'm sure how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game is going to be, or the Dead by Daylight. Except if you work in the feature that whoever the thing is first, you're indistinguishable the entire time. And if you get someone else, it's think of it more like zombies from like infected game mode from Halo, where it starts with one person and your goal is to get everyone infected.
I also think it would be very similar to like that, but like in VR maybe a week ago we played Murder, where one person's like a sheriff they're the only person with the ability to take out the thing, and then the thing would infect people one by one, but it looks exactly like everybody else. Like you can't tell the difference.
Exactly.
So yeah, I totally would. I'll actually agree. I'll retract my statement of creature feature. It does feel that way a lot. The movie definitely has those vibes, but you are right. It is not it's just a feature film, if you will. But then another thing that I really liked upon researching the movie is I guess that they kept the set at 40 degrees, even though it's not like freezing or anything. That's why the characters look cold. Like they don't look like they're sitting in a warm, remote area, which is pretty cool. But then another feeling that I really got, and I think they've talked about it in one, but similar to the Blair Witch Project, which I mentioned earlier, where they actually didn't know what happened to the map, and they didn't know who took the map. And spoilers for that movie, but that's fine. we've already said that before, but so it created a lot of chaos because they didn't know the script. They didn't know that they were supposed to lose the map or what was going to happen, or like when they wake up, there's stuff outside their tent. In this movie, well, they knew the script and they knew like the scenes where the creature would kind of like somewhat reveal itself in ways. In general conversations, the directors didn't tell anyone like, okay, at this moment you are the creature. Or like, so like everyone's kind of on edge not knowing who they're talking to, which I think totally gives that real atmosphere, which holds up great.
Yeah, and it's similar, I would say, to kind of like what happened with Alien, when they didn't tell them about the chestburster sequence in the original film.
It just creates a real reaction.
Yeah, exactly. It's much more real, and I think, you know, you get a lot of that reaction by not showing your actors the things that they're gonna have to go up against.
Yeah,
Like having to the sequence in the original film that where they're all sitting on the couch tied up, and then the one of them just starts like shape shifting. I know it's fake, but I would not want to sit there. And props to the balls on the guy who's like the leader or whatever, who had to sit right next to it for like.
Was that Kurt Russell?
No. It was like the older guy.
The other guy.
Yeah. Just absolutely insane, but yeah, I mean, that's going to lead us into, I mean, the thing that we haven't really we've talked about it a little bit, but not really in depth, is the practical effects on this movie.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely some of the best of the period, and maybe some of the best ever. It's definitely in contention for the running.
It wasn't ILM that did it, right?
No, let me actually look that up.
It's on par. Like, some of the stuff is on par with what we were seeing revolutionize practical effects when like Star Wars came out. I mean, it is definitely, as far as horror goes and like body mutation and stuff like that, they are absolutely top notch.
So the Thing's visual effects were done by someone named Robert Botten. He's a American special makeup effects creator. He's worked with John Carpenter, Paul Verhoeven, and David Fincher on a bunch of different things. Is most well known for The Thing, but also RoboCop and Total Recall, which is also huge films. And has also worked on things like Game of Thrones, the crime movie Seven, and actually did work on Star Wars. So
nice. There you go.
I had originally thought it was Stan Winston, but I guess not. But absolutely incredible stuff. Like, again, some of the best in Hollywood. Like, there's a reason why film buffs always point to this movie as why practical effects are, you know, they're not always better, but why most of the time it does sell the believability. Like, the sequence when the guy's head drops off and then turns into a spider that sticks in, not for the pun, but it sticks in my head, right? Like, it's just like I can't get that image on my head.
Great prop to have in someone's prop collection, that actual model.
I'm sure it's somewhere. Like,
probably Adam Savage has it, probably.
Maybe.
Somewhere.
Yeah, it's hiding in his bedroom or something. But I'm hesitant to kind of discuss any of the, even with the spoiler warning, I am hesitant to talk about any of the creature specific moments, just because
you should watch it.
If no one has seen this movie, or if you haven't seen the movie is what I meant to say, you should go into this blind, not expecting anything, because, and I will be there with you, to watch it, if I know you. If I don't know you, I won't be there. But, like, I want to see people's reactions like they would have done in the 80s. Like, the gut reaction to seeing whatever happens on screen happen. It's, I live to see moments like that.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, what you said earlier about it being like Among Us, it totally is, because they still have to do their tasks.
Yeah.
Like, there's still things that need to get done, so that whatever the creature is pretending to do things.
Yep.
And be like, here I am taking samples.
Yes, let me go to the bathroom. It goes into the kitchen and starts making a grilled cheese sandwich, and it's like, I'm pretty sure that's not going to the bathroom there, bud.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch and try to like pick apart too. It's good for the audience because you kind of feel like you're a member of it as well.
Definitely. And the enclosed area in the space and where it takes place really lends to that. And it's very believable that it's in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
So, But we have another movie to talk about, so let's go ahead and drop some final thoughts and a score for the original Thing. Adrian, what's your final thought and score?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it does hold up in terms of the movie's concepts. I think some of the things that don't are just the depth of the movie, and that's more just a personal thing. But I do think that it does a lot of stuff right, similar to Blair Witch Project. It's definitely a cult horror classic, and definitely a must-watch if you like horror. If you like horror and you haven't seen it, then I don't know why. I feel like you've definitely heard about it if you're in any sort of horror circles. But because of that, I gave it a 75.
75. All right. I said that the Thing, for the Thing, this masterwork of horror of the unknown, combined with incredible practical effects, was definitely an under-recognized work of its time, and gladly it is getting the attention now. I love this movie. I own it. And that being said, I gave it a 91. I think it is really, really strong.
Nice.
And I would argue it's John Carpenter's best movie. I would say that the original Halloween is definitely a little it's a little rough by today's standards. It's a lot of just Michael Myers standing and peeking around corners and hiding back in bushes. But let's go ahead and move on to what everyone thought was going to be a remake, ended up being a prequel, which is 2011's The Thing, directed by, I'm going to say this wrong, so please, I apologize, was directed by Mathis von Heiningen. I hope I'm seeing that. But Mathis von Heiningen Jr. and stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Joel Edgerton, and Ulrich Thompson. At an Antarctica research site, the discovery of an alien craft leads to a confrontation between graduate student Kate Lloyd and scientist Dr. Sander Halverson. So, this movie is going to have spoilers for, obviously, itself, but also for the original movie. So, I feel like we should just go ahead and quick, as spoiler-free as possible thoughts before we jump into the spoiler stuff. So I will go first this time. I actually really enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. And I think a lot of the reasons why people look at this movie negatively are for reasons that are outside of the filmmaker's control. It definitely was studio interference. And we'll get into that as we talk about my score. I'm not saying this movie is amazing. It's definitely more of a guilty pleasure, I think, thing for me, or maybe slightly above that. But I think as when serving as a complementary piece to the original, I think it serves to make both films better.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree. I actually really enjoyed this one. I don't know if I enjoy it as much. I think it does a lot of things. It's so funny. I think it does equal things right and equal things wrong. They just changed up what went right and what went wrong. Just for example, this is obviously a new movie, so there's an introduction of CGI for a good portion. That's pretty rough because in 2011 we were just kind of getting to like ultra believable CGI, and this was still pretty. What they were trying to do is still kind of a lot. So that kind of stuff like that, like it swapped positives, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird in that regard. But let's go ahead and drop a spoiler warning because this is going to spoil both films when we discuss this film. So dropping that right now. So yeah, I think I went into this movie expecting to not like it, based off of what I had heard, that it wasn't as good. And based off of things that I had seen before. I think it was Corridor Digital that had covered this at some point, and it had kind of changed my perception on what I thought of the film. And I think that's what I really want to touch on first, which is one of the roughest parts of this movie, which is the CGI.
Yeah, definitely the low light.
Specifically, all the stuff having to do with the body horror. The actual, again, we already did a spoiler alert. The original alien creature, nothing wrong there. I thought that looked great.
Yeah.
For the little bit of time it's in the movie. But what's really disappointing, and I don't know if you know this, is that all the CG shots, so like when the I forget her name, but the other female doctor transforms and her head like leans back or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the creature moments in this movie were all filmed practically and were a part of a completed version until the studio told them to put in visual effects instead.
Oh, so there is a practical cut of the film.
There are practical shots of pretty much everything, which and a lot of time, like it's specifically the moment when the other scientist, she's kind of like looking over and like she's all bent back and everything.
Yeah.
The CG is put on top of the practical in the film. So underneath,
So just to amplify it, right? Like to make it worse.
no, they completely just like made a whole new model and just added it to the scene on top of the practical effects to cover it up.
You can't see the practical at all. It's like a full comp over the original effect.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
really sad. And again, I don't blame the director for that. I don't think it was his decision. I don't think it was anyone on the cast's decision.
Yeah.
I think that was purely a producer or studio that just wanted to push it forward. And I do understand where they're coming from, because with visual effects you can do a little bit more than what you can do with practical effects in terms of not having to hide anything. But it really fails to sell the believability, no matter how creative these new designs are, no matter how,
Yeah.
creative it can be. But to be fair, there are still some really good practical stuff in this movie.
Totally. Yeah. It's just that the like CGI, I feel like I would rather, most people, I would say not everybody, but most people would prefer, like, I would rather see a practical effect and be able to see how it was done and be impressed by that in the movie than to watch bad CGI. Because I feel like bad CGI takes you out of a movie, and really good see-through practical effects
Bring
pull
you
me
into
in.
it.
Like, I want to know more. Like, holy cow, people actually made this thing happen on set. Like, that's real blood flying around. That's real this.
And
That's really a table breaking kind of thing. Like, even anything.
And the actor had to sit on a couch next to something like that happening and not freak out. But I do think the CG is probably the biggest reason why this movie isn't as well
It
regarded.
really takes you out
as
a
the original.
lot.
It really does, which is really unfortunate, and it's the exact opposite effect of what I think the studio wanted to happen. Because I think the rest of this movie, save for one major part, it has the potential to be as good as the original in a true prequel.
Yeah, I think Mary Elizabeth
Winstead.
Winston? Great. I think she was an awesome addition to the movie. I think that she did awesome.
Yeah.
And I always forget the movie that she's from. Scott Pilgrim?
She's been in several. She was in Scott Pilgrim. She was also in 10 Cloverfield Lane. She was
Cloverfield Lane is a movie I was trying to think of. Yeah. But she's just really
Birds of Prey
good.
too.
She's really good with this like horror thriller genre. 10 Cloverfield Lane is also one of my favorite movies, even though it's also kind of equally, I would say, as like mixed reviewed as
I
this.
would say more people highly regard 10 Cloverfield Lane than this.
Yeah, okay, good. They should.
Yeah, this is a fantastic
But yeah,
movie.
she's very good, and the acting performances overall, I thought, aside from like the guy that was like the funny guy in this one,
Yeah.
he was like okay, but most people held their own. I felt like it was fine.
I would say on the whole, the performances here are better than the original. Maybe that's because it's just...
Aside from Kurt Russell, I feel like Kurt Russell did really, really well in the first one.
I'm talking as a whole. Like, I mean,
Okay, you
the
did say that. Yeah,
whole
yeah.
cast taken into effect. Yeah, I mean, Kurt
Yeah.
Russell makes the thing. So,
Yeah.
but I do want to go over the one thing that I do really not like about this movie, and that would be, I guess, the final act when they go back to the ship.
Okay.
It was kind of one of those things. I had forgotten everything about this movie before I watched it yesterday, and I just was like, "Oh, I hope they don't go back to the ship and just do like a final confrontation." And then it literally happens.
Yeah, they had the alien final battle moment like in Alien, like the showdown.
It just wasn't that kind of undercut the being trapped in location vibe. And it's like,
Totally, you remove them from the confinement. It's like now we're out.
exactly. It just doesn't really work for me as an ending. That's not the ending, but that specific key moment doesn't work.
Yeah, and I
After
think it's
that
one of those things.
is very good.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things to allude to like the same feeling that gives me It's literally like if in Saw, like the horror movie, if someone breaks out of the building and it's like the music's playing and it's like we're free, like we're out, and then Jigsaw shows up again, you're kind of like, oh, well, they're out.
Or more, that they get out and they get out of the room, and then all of a sudden the music flares up and they're at a circus and they have a fist fight with Jigsaw for their freedom, which has no relevancy to the plot or reasoning for why Jigsaw does what he does. But
now let's just get a physical fist fight going.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think they were trying to meld a little too much into Alien at that point, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I think they wanted to give the people, just like similar to the new, or the newer, it's kind of old now, but the new Blair Witch, where they showed the witch. And it's like, no one wanted to see that.
I mean, to be fair, the Blair Witch looked horrifying.
They did a good job, but it's like, that's not what people want. Like, no, the horror comes from not knowing. It's the whole original movie is about the unknown. And the fact that they gave the people that kind of big payoff. But in the movie, I found myself being like, huh, that's not really what I thought the witch would look like. Which takes me out of the movie. Like, it pulls back a curtain on something that everyone has a subjective opinion on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this did, is like they just jump a little bit too quickly, and it's like, oh, okay, now we're like battling.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird moment. But that does lead us to I would say the two incredible endings for this film. There are two endings, you could say. The first one was Joel Edgerton and Mary Elizabeth Winstead coming out of the ship, and she realizing that Joel Edgerton is not human.
Yep.
And lighting fire to him in the truck, which they do sow enough doubt in your head that you're like, is he actually an alien?
One of those things, like, I think it's that part of like better safe than sorry. Like,
yeah,
you just got to do it.
but it's kind of one of those things, like they do it in slow motion. And he screams in slow motion, which a scream in slow motion doesn't sound human. So he very well could just be a normal human being, but you don't know for sure.
If it totally clipped, like it's too slow, and he's like, like it's like the rest of the movie's like AAA horror, and then there's like a clipping slow-mo sound.
Yeah. But then it leads us into what I was, again, I hadn't seen this in forever, but what I was really hoping they were going to show, and they do, which is during the credits, every couple of seconds, they show the footage of how it leads directly into the original.
Yeah, which is cool, because it's also, I feel like a lot of movies, I know now there's like always the big stinger in the end of the credits now, but this was a way to like keep, the movie's not over. Like, you can hang out and watch more.
You know, I think a lot of people, I mean, fans of the original movie definitely went in and from the beginning knew that this was a prequel. Because in the original movie, they do talk about the Norwegians, and they go to their camp, and they see everything that they see that happens by the end of this movie. But then, you know, it just carrying it directly, and I think that at the end was just so perfect for even cluing in, I think, the rest of the audience who had seen the original but wasn't like too knowledgeable, was like, oh wait, that
it brings you right there. Like, it brings you right up. It's like Rogue One. Like, it literally brings you like right up to the next movie.
Or it's kind of similar to Split, when Split came out, and then there was the sequence that was right before the credits when it's Bruce Willis's character from Unbreakable. Yeah. And you're like, oh wait! And then like that's, I love those kinds of moments. So it's like, you know, it's not fan service, it's like that, it's the same story. So I think that's just, it's so unbelievably smart. And the way they do it is great with the original music, and like, it's the original helicopter, it looks like. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's great. Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, that's honestly, I think this movie's reputation is dragged down the gutter because of the CGI and just that really poor choice, because the rest of the film is pretty darn good.
It's just tough because that CGI does pull you out of the movie more often than you get to just sit in it and enjoy. It's almost like every other scene, you're just being reminded that it's bad. Like, it's really tough to look past.
Yeah. The best way I can describe it, or both of these movies, is like a summer trip to the pool. You go in, and let me explain.
Okay.
You go into the pool.
It's a very scary movie.
You go into the pool and you're swimming, and it's super fun. And then you have to get out for some reason. You have to go eat lunch. You have to, take a break or whatever. But then you get back into the pool for the second time, but it's cut short because your parents have to say, hey, we got to go. And it's just that one thing that pulls you out of it, that makes it sours that last half of the day or whatever.
And it's also...
So that's the visual that comes to my mind. Maybe because it's hot in my room right now and I want to go swimming, but...
I think it's also... I think to that same point, I think it's also like, you're in the pool, I'm in the movie, I get pulled out. My temperature is always changing, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I've already taken the time, I got in the pool, I warmed up, I'm in the pool, then I get out, I get back to my normal temperature. Jumping back in the pool, it's going to be a little cold again. And every time you have to readjust. So that constant back and forth of literally like every 5 to 10 minutes being pulled out is like constantly having to dive back in. And it's like, eventually, that's just a lot to ask of someone to keep jumping back in the pool. Like eventually it's like, let's just go home.
Yeah.
So it's tough. You never want to go home in this movie. It is good enough. The rest of it does make up for wanting to finish it. But it's a chore. It's a workout going in and out of the pool for sure.
Yeah, and I would definitely, I would watch this first, then the original.
Yeah,
just for chronological reasons. I think because it makes the most sense. You're getting the complete story that way. So,
yeah.
Anywho, let's go ahead and give some final thoughts and a score before we go out for the episode. Since I started it off, I'll go first. I said, while it does suffer from too many CGI shots over practical, literally, physically put in over the practical, it does make my enjoyment of the first better, and it does feel complimentary, if not a little overdone here and there, especially with the final climax fight. That being said, I still have a lot of fun with this movie, and I gave it a 65.
That's exactly what I gave this movie.
Oh, nice.
Another one. I think it's definitely not quite as good for me. I mean, I think they go hand in hand. I do think you should watch both. I think they're both good in their own rights. I think they both tell a really good story, and I think you should see them.
That's absolutely correct. So, that is going to bring us to an end for this back-to-back. Adrian, where can people find us online if they want to follow us or check us out?
You can follow us or check us out at the Drive Back Podcast, anywhere you'd like. That's podcasting apps here on YouTube, anywhere you'd like. We can go ahead and get in touch with you, or you get in touch with us. Please leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed anything that you heard today. Those help a ton, and we'll give you a shout-out. Apple Podcasts is the best place to do that. And then if you're here on YouTube, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, like, and hit the bell. We post every Monday.
That is every correct. That is absolutely correct. Jeez Louise.
Every correct.
That is every form of correct. But next week we're going to be taking a look at Robert Zemeckis' Beowulf with Angelina Jolie as the gold liquid sexy creature. So we're gonna.
What else could you want?
Yeah, that's the synopsis for the movie.
I think that was literally the whole trailer, if I remember.
It was literally just, you were enticed by the point you could see Angelina Jolie naked, that you're like, okay, yeah, it makes up for the rest of the movie.
You were like watching Angelina Jolie, and you're like, oh, she's got a new movie coming out. And then it's like Beowulf, and you're like, who's Beowulf? What?
Is she Beowulf? Like, what's going on? But that's going to be next week, so make sure you subscribe, follow, and like us so you can get the notification when it comes out. So that'll be coming on out soon. But since this is the end of the episode, we want to have a quick mention for actor James Caan, who did pass away. Unfortunately, he has left this world with a long body of work, though, that is very highly respected, including The Godfather, one of the obviously highest rated, one of the most well-renowned films of all time. So rest in peace, James Caan, and our sympathies to the Caan family. But that is going to bring us to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We love you so much. We'll see you next time here on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.